Hey everyone, thanks for joining us this week on our expert interview series. And I'm super excited for our guest this week, Alex. And here he is here. Super excited to have him on. He's been a coach of mine that I've been working with for the past couple months, him and Will, and they're really, really experts in terms of being able to hone in on not just components of marketing, but sales, deliverability of courses, of the services, everything they're doing, and ultimately finance. And finance is a really big topic. We've had other people kind of chat a little bit about different topics here. But usually people are so gung-ho about sales and marketing and all these other things that they forget about the key components of it's really about how much you keep, not necessarily how much you make, and in some of those nuances of finances. And I know I've went through periods of time in myself where I made a bunch of money and then realized like, oh man, I didn't necessarily budget quite as good as I needed to. And this can create all sorts of problems. So I know Alex, is a master at being able to do this stuff. So I thought it'd be extremely important for him to come on today and talk a little bit about financials and kind of how to organize your business. So that way you're getting the most profitability from your business and not just revenues, because those are two independent things sometimes people get caught up on. So I appreciate you coming on today, and maybe just give us a little overview about who you are, and for those of us who don't know who you are already.
Heck yeah, man. First of all, thanks for having me on here. This is awesome. Love nerding out on this stuff together. And you've done such a great job building your business, man. We've been working together now for a few months. Just so cool to see how much you're helping people. And I'm a super nerd. So as we talk today, you guys will see like, oh man, numbers and I have to like actually address profit and all this stuff. Sometimes this overwhelms people. And I'm the kind who like I'll sit down in my free time to build spreadsheets and track stuff. And I just love it. And I guess a little bit of backstory on me. I'm a physical therapist by training, but I have never practiced as a licensed physical therapist. As soon as I got out of school, I knew that I wanted to be doing something in the online space. And just so happened that I'd started a podcast. I'd started nerding out on Facebook ads and with Will Boyd, who I think you had Will on the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he talked about
Yeah.
it, of course.
So with Will, we started a Facebook group, and this was back in 2017. And once it got to like 500 people, we were like, maybe we should do something with this and try to like actually take the people that we were teaching and the information that we were teaching and make something out of it. And people started asking us for to put all the videos that we were doing into a membership area. And that was kind of the birth of our business. And so we had built this business very much from scratch, no funding whatsoever, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs bootstrapping things. And over the course of a year, got to the point where like we were actually making some decent money. And we had launched our first true course. It was called Ads for PTs. It's not around anymore. There are people who do it way better now, but like, people like you, by the way. and it was crazy, man. We got to the point where we had made, it was like $115,000 in 4 months. And after we had that second launch of that program, it was like $82,000 that we made in that launch. We sat down and I realized I have no clue how to run a business. We knew how to generate revenue. We knew how to make sales. We knew how to deliver on those sales, but we didn't really know how to run a business. And if you're an entrepreneur who's in the first few years of your business, you probably recognize that like, hey, I actually don't know anything about business finances and organizing things and how taxes work and how much I can pay myself and all of that. And that came to a head really quickly when I realized it's like, shoot, what do we do with all this money? And I know we've had conversations about this too, right? Where it's like, you make lots of money, but then do you actually keep it? And so that was the genesis of this whole thing, was figuring that out for our own business of, now that we've made money, what do we do with it? Which is, dude, it's a great problem to have.
Can be.
It can be. So that was where this all started. And then about a year and a half later, as we had gotten into helping course creators and coaches like yourself manage their business and put systems into place and actually have a plan to scale the thing, we had made our first few people their first 6 figures. And I was having a conversation with one of them one day, and he mentioned that his personal finances were still really tight. And I was like, how are your personal finances tight? You made $100,000 in the past, like, I don't know, it was past like 4 or 5 months. Like, how is that possible? And he said, well, actually, to tell you the truth, I don't have any organization in my business with like how the money works. I don't really know what I'm doing with it. I don't really know how to pay myself. And I have no clue about my tax situation. And I was like, why are we going to focus so much on making money if we can't actually keep any of it? And that turned me onto this kind of, I guess it's really a side gig now of helping people figure out their business finances. So that's kind of the backstory of what got me nerding out on this to such a big degree.
Love it. Yeah. And I think that's a super, super big component because, if you don't have that stuff, situated, then you can't really accurately strategically plan, like how much do you need to spend on marketing? What's my ROI on stuff? And, I think that the financial aspect is probably like one of the weaker sets for most people. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone, and rightfully so, everyone focuses in their business early on generating clients, right? On figuring out marketing, sales, and delivery. And then they just get in this loop of thinking that, well, my financial situation will just change if I just make more sales and I get more money in the door. And that's like, actually, if you don't have at least some baseline systems and understanding of how taxes work and how money should be flowing in and out of your business, you end up just making bad judgment calls on what you should do with things. And so I see a lot of people, especially in the clinical space, who even have clinics with multiple employees, maybe they're part-time or even full-time employees, paying them really well, and they're not paying themselves nearly as well as they're paying their employees. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why are we running this business? It's not just like a job creation medium. Like, that's noble and great, but you're running the business to earn profit for yourself while serving the greater good. And people get that messed up.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that I hear from people often. It's like they're pay their staff more than they pay themselves. And people get tricked into this mindset. And a lot of people probably get upset when they hear this potentially. So I'm not, if you get offended, sorry. But it's like, you got into business to not give yourself a high paying, to not just give yourself a job or even a high paying job, but like you got in business, you're taking the risk. You deserve to get, to get paid. And if people get in this mindset, I think, where it's like, you got to hustle and, you're not going to make money for the first 2 years and stuff. And I think those are fallacies that people make up to kind of like make themselves feel better and sort of like distract themselves from the reality of building a business. Everything's going to be kind of different. I totally understand that. But, I think when you're first starting out, like, would you agree that like you should be getting paid? You shouldn't have to go for periods of time of like not making anything or not being able to feed your family or whatever it is.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing that's just so stupid. And it's they get the vision and they see someone who's having success in a business and they think, wow, I really want to leave my job and have that kind of freedom, right? And they see they see a webinar or they get into a program and they think, man, I just really want to own this business and leave my 9 to 5 finally, which is great. Like I love the fact that you want to own your time like that, be your own boss, etc. But then they get into it and they're like, that's it, I'm leaving my job right now, I'm going full time, and they don't have anything in place for it. They don't have like reserves or real savings in place. And they think that like, just because I start a business, suddenly cash is going to be flowing and I'm going to be just fine. It'll all just work out. I actually think it's way smarter for people to work a 9 to 5, save up money so that they can have a little bit of a runway, start a business on the side, get some money coming in, validate that it works, that they can make the machines go from start to finish. And then once that's working, like, cool, can I phase out my full-time job knowing that I can scale up the business? And like the true smart entrepreneurs do it that way. I was in the fortunate situation where we were living so dirt cheap that my wife, as a part-time nurse, was able to finance our family. I was going through PT school. We all know that you're not making money, or at least not much, while you're in school full-time. And so we just kept to that same level of that same standard of living. And I knew that I could build the business on the side because we didn't need all the income. And I think that so many people get themselves into crappy situations as entrepreneurs, feeling like, oh, I'll just bankroll the whole thing. I'll put it on a bunch of credit cards, go way into debt to start the business, leave my job and try to work my way out of a hole. That's a terrible way to start a business, man. Terrible. And on top of that, it puts you in a position where you need the money. And so you make bad decisions and you work with people that you maybe shouldn't work with, or you say yes to opportunities that you shouldn't say yes to. And it overall slows you down from where you could be if you didn't have all that pressure on your plate. So that's the first mistake I see financially from people, is they just jump into things without a plan, not knowing if it's going to work. And then ultimately, like you're saying, they get to the point where because they've hustled so much and they think that just reinvesting back into the business is the thing to do, they never really pay themselves. And it's that second stage of the business, once it's making money and you've got cash in the bank, it's like, cool, you need to start becoming a priority in your business. You are the most important single element in your business. You need to be compensated for that. And not everyone can pay themselves full-time salary starting off, but at least start paying yourself something. And that's what I ultimately help people do when they're in the early phases of their business, is look at what can we afford to pay ourselves so that we don't bankrupt the business, but that we keep ourselves motivated to make a sale. Like when you make a sale and great, some of that actually comes to my family. It ends up being a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. And that, I think what you said is really important, because I kind of say this with mindset from the beginning. It's like, goes back to like why you're starting the business in the first place. People have this fallacy that like, hey, if you're a business owner, you now are flying first class and you've got, Bentleys and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, people just assume that. And the reality is like, people get frustrated. They don't want to work with their boss. So they try to do their own thing. And I think like, you've got to have a good plan, because, if you build it, they will come, doesn't work majority of the time, unless you have some sort of like special outlier situation, which obviously someone's going to have that. I've had a couple people who had that, but it's just not going to happen for most people. And you get into that, and all of a sudden it's like, well, now you spent way too much money or whatever it might be, and you're kind of, in trouble. So what do you think are like some tips for people who are like starting out, they're starting their business? What are some good financial set points or checklists or whatever you have that are like must know, you have to know this, these numbers or whatever it is?
Okay. So I'm going to still screen share here. I'm going to share my screen. I literally about an hour ago just got off a call with someone going through their financial situation who they'd made a ton of money and had no clue how to do anything with it. And this is the checklist that we went through together, which I think will be really pertinent for people listening. First thing is, if you're a business owner and you don't have control over your personal finances, like nothing's going to magically change where your business finances are going to be great. Like if your personal finances are in a shamble, or you have never addressed them, or you're not the money person for your personal finances, your business is really going to struggle to actually make money and keep it. And so the first thing I always tell people is you've got to get on top of your personal finances. And in my program, where I have people actually get organized with their finances, we tackle personal finances first. And so biggest things are that we have to know is, number one, we got to be able to track stuff. So we'll just put tracking. And I want to know both on my personal finances and in the business finances, just very simply, what's coming in versus out. Right? Like this is super basic, but you would be so surprised how many people don't have this written down, and they don't have it anywhere. It's like,
we don't learn
right?
it.
Yeah, exactly. We're not taught this. It's not like we're handed some manual when we go incorporate as an LLC, or we get our S corp set up or whatever. It's not like, hey, here's the manual for how to take care of your money. It's like, good luck, go make money, hope it works. And so this is the first thing: is, are you even tracking what's coming in and what's going out? And that should be written down somewhere, not just a mental list of, oh yeah, I pay for this thing and this thing and this thing. So tracking. Number two, we've got to look at, so this is personal side, right? We always look at personal side. What's coming in, what's going out. Next, we have to look at, where am I financially? Like, what is my current financial status? So do I have debt? If so, like how much of that has to go out the door every month to debt? Do I have savings? Just keeping things super basic here. If you're an entrepreneur and you're full-time in the business and you don't have 6 months of personal savings right now, or 3 months or 1 month of personal savings, you should not be in business. Like, you should not be an entrepreneur running at the whims of entrepreneurship and not have personal savings. And so it kills me when people are like, oh no, what's that?
Sorry, to cover your personal expenses for 3 years or 6 months.
Yes. So when someone comes to me and they say, you know what, personally, I'm in lots of debt, so I'm just throwing all my money at my debt right now. I'm like, well, cool. Do you have an emergency fund for your personal expenses? And they say, no, I'm doing the Dave Ramsey method, man. Like I've got $1,000 and everything else I'm throwing at debt. Dude, if you're an entrepreneur, the Dave Ramsey formula does not work. No. I've had way too many friends who, when COVID hit, they had their $1,000 emergency fund if they were lucky, and their business income got totally slashed, and all of a sudden $1,000 gets poofed away in like 2 trips to the grocery store, and they're hosed. Like, that does not work as an entrepreneur. So I make people aim for, number one, we start at 1 month of expenses in savings, meaning like if I spend $5,000 a month on my personal finances for food and rent or mortgage or car payments or whatever, I want to save 1 month of that in a fund that I never touch for anything else. And then we go to 3 months. And then as we get a little bit more advanced, we take out a couple other things before this, but then we get to 6 months and then eventually to 12 months.
Do you have separate bank accounts for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I have all my money mishmashed together, I have no clue what's what. And this is number two. We'll get into it in just a minute. I call them buckets. But yes, I absolutely have different accounts for each of these. But this is the very first one, like personal savings, man, to get a personal reserve fund, personal emergency fund, first of 1,000, then of 3 months. So if we look at that, the whole reason is I want to be able to sleep well at night and not have pressure on me. Right now we have 12 months of savings that's just dedicated towards emergency fund. I will hopefully never touch that money, period, and it will just sit there. And some people will say, well, that's an opportunity cost, Alex. You could be investing that. Absolutely. But guess what? I'm in this not just for ROI, but I'm in this for ROA, return on attention. I want to be able to put my full attention into the business, knowing that my personal finances are good. So if you don't have a 1 month emergency fund and you're talking about anything about 401ks or figuring out SEP IRAs or real estate investing or anything, like stop all of that right now and go get your 1 month emergency fund. And then if you're an entrepreneur, especially get to 3 months, realistically 6, so that you can operate the business and do whatever you need to there and breathe, knowing that if you have a low month, it's okay. We've got that in there. So yeah, absolutely different savings buckets for these. And I can get into that, but those are the first two things. So I don't know if you want to stop there and hit on anything, but that's like baseline what we first start at.
I think it's a good idea because, too many people do get into like what their cash flow and all that stuff needs to look like and so on and so on. But it's like, yeah, if you don't have enough at home, then you're kind of like, in trouble.
Totally.
Sure. So
totally.
I think it also goes down into like financial health, where you're actually like knowing what you're even spending. Cause there's I remember having clients making hundreds of thousands of dollars being like, can't afford gym memberships. And it's just mind blow. Like, how do you not have $80? Because they would just blow it. Right. So I'll definitely think it's an awesome place to start because if you don't have that, you can't survive, so to speak.
Yeah. So that's the very first place. And then we get to the question of, cool, on the personal side, are you covered for emergencies? So I even dive into things like life insurance. You absolutely should have life insurance. You should probably have disability insurance too. And then things like food storage, water storage, a little bit of fuel storage on hand. And I'm not like crazy prepper level, but I do have food storage for if, like, for example, when COVID hit and none of us wanted to go to the store or a bunch of food was gone. Like it was okay because we had food storage. Like my wife cooks bread. She makes really good whole wheat bread. And she'd go to the store to try to find wheat and it was sold out for like months. It was okay because we had these big old like 50-gallon things of wheat. We had an earthquake here about 5 months ago in the middle of COVID, dude. It's been exciting in Utah, but we had an earthquake and everyone was like, oh no, is the water going to get contaminated because pipes are breaking? It's like, cool. Do you have a little bit of emergency water on hand to take care of that stuff? So those are the types of things that I talk to people about first in their finances. If you don't have those things done, it doesn't matter because you're not like, we're going to be playing for the long-term stuff when it's like, dude, we gotta figure out the here and now, make sure we're good. And then we can get to all the fun stuff in the business. So that's what I call the kind of the foundational stuff with personal finances before we even touch business stuff. And everyone asks, okay, well, do I need to have different bank accounts? Like, heck yeah. And that's where we move into this question of I call them buckets. And I've got 5 different buckets that I usually recommend for people. We always have our checking bucket. And that's just like our checking account where money goes in and out of there, right? And this is all on the personal side. And then we got to have our emergency savings. And then usually you get to choose a couple others that make sense for you. Most people end up having some sort of medical emergency. So I recommend having a medical savings or a medical bucket. And then for our family, we decided, hey, we want to have a couple other things. We want to have an investing bucket. And we want to have a car bucket. Wow. Autocorrect And so I have 5 separate bank accounts that where my money is stored on the personal side for each of these things. Now they're all connected. It's like all at the same bank, but they're just in different accounts. So just go open up a different savings or checking account here. And then all my money comes into or out of checking. And then my emergency fund just stays static. My medical fund grows every month because I put money into it. My investing fund grows every month because I put money into it. My car fund grows every month because I put money into it. You just set up auto, dude, it's so easy. You set up auto transfers and you can automate your savings every month. Like it just makes things so easy. And that's the foundation of what we need to have on the personal side. And then we can talk about all the fun business stuff. But it makes no sense to talk about, hey, let's increase your profits in your business by 30%. Well, why? Why? Like what do you want it to actually do for you? And so we look at from the personal side, what do we want the business to do for us and why? And then we can go have the conversation of, great, how are we going to increase profits? What do we need to do? And how do we pipe that money from the business into the personal?
Yeah, I think, and I think an important part to even just wrap up with that in direct is that the reason you're in business is for this stuff, ideally in the first place anyways, to give you the lifestyle. Yes. So if we don't have that sort of sorted out, obviously like this is the top tier of taking advantage of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't matter if you end up creating some great new campaign to get a bunch of new patients and you sell an extra 10 grand this month in patients, but then it doesn't actually end up ultimately serving you or your family. Like what's the point of all that? The whole point is to give you freedom, right? That's why you left the job in the first place, was to get more freedom, to be able to be your own boss. But we don't actually get more freedom if we don't end up having extra, like more cash in the bank. My whole goal of the business is to be able to make so much money that I can make this investing bucket as big as possible. And the investing bucket then can start working harder than I am. And the goal is that we make our money start to do more for us than our time can do for us. And that buys back more of our time. And so that's my whole game with business, is how can I make enough so that I get the base set up? And that's usually where most people are at. It's like, hey, I got to get my foundation. And then we can go start having the conversation of, great, what do we do investing wise to make the money work for us? And that's what I think everyone intends, but they never quite get there because they don't think about their foundation. They don't have any organization. They don't have a business or a vision of where things need to go personally. And then once we have this, sweet, then let's talk about the conversation of what's happening in your business.
Yeah, so important. Why do you think so many people kind of miss these base level steps?
Because we're all focused on our area of expertise, and we think that being a really good practitioner of our craft is what really matters. And while that's super important, because look, that's what school trains us for. School trains us to be really good practitioners of the thing. Whether you're a chiropractor, a dentist, a PT, an OT, a mathematician, like you get trained to be a really good practitioner. You don't get trained to be a business owner and a steward over your finances. Like it's de-emphasized in our world. And we all just think that, my financial plan is just that I go and I work really hard and I save 5% into my 401k and I get a match and I hope that, 60 years down the road, things work out and I end up with enough money. And that's that. And I just have to be the best practitioner I can of my craft. And hopefully that's how it'll make me money. And it's like, well, no one talks about this stuff. And that's why I decided, I need to step up and start talking about that stuff, especially if I'm going to be helping business owners make more money. I felt like I had a responsibility to not only help them make more money, but keep it too. And I think it's just the financial literacy is not there for business owners because it's never been a priority.
Got it, for sure. So when someone's got like their financials, their personal stuff together, what's kind of the next step? Or I guess maybe even like someone's working on that, but they've got a business right now, and like, where do they start? Because they're already knee deep into the mud, so to speak, with their business. Like, how do they kind of do it? And they might not be able to spend a year getting all the other stuff sorted out.
Totally. And that's the thing, is like, this is something that we do over time, right? It's like, first we set up the baseline emergency fund for your personal finances. We get that set up. You make sure that you've got your business, your different buckets and all that stuff. Then if we look at your business, then again, we have to it models the personal finances. We have to know what's coming in and what's going out. And we have to track that. A lot of people say, well, what do you use to track? Look, I build spreadsheets. That's like, I'm spreadsheet nerd. So I built some really freaking cool spreadsheets for our own business to do that. Brad, I don't know if you've seen those yet. Have you gone into Profit U enough to see the spreadsheets yet?
I have not yet.
Okay. All right. Well, over the weekend, man, you'll have to hit those. But I just track everything in a Google Sheet, and you can make up your own if you want, or you can use something like QuickBooks or Xero or whatever you want. But we got to be able to track stuff. We got to know what's coming in, what's coming out, and what we can expect coming in for next month, for example, from a revenue standpoint. And then we have to understand how money is supposed to flow in our business and what we need to allocate it to when it comes in. And so, first thing to think about is taxes. And for a business owner who's been in the game for a while, you probably get the tax situation now. But if you're in the first 2 to 3 years of your business, you probably realistically don't have a clue what's going on with taxes. And so there's 2 different conversations there. There's the tax strategy and how we should have our business set up from an entity structure standpoint to be able to not have taxes up the wazoo. People get all bent out of shape about Donald Trump not paying taxes. And there's a reason that it shows up as him not paying lots in taxes. He's still paying a lot, but his business structure is set up so that he pays less. You can have the same exact tax structure as Donald Trump. I do. It's great. It's saving me a bunch of money this year. And so understanding how is the tax structure set up and how do you legally have the right entity structured so that you pay less in taxes. But then there's the other question of, great, how much should I be saving for my business? And that completely depends on your business and how much you end up making. But for our business, we found that for the first about $150,000 that we made, we needed to save about 15% of revenue, 15% of sales for taxes. And that covers all of our personal, state, and federal taxes. And then as we grew the business and we got more and more profitable, we doubled that. We realized we needed to save about 20% of revenue for taxes. And that's what we do right now. And that's actually a little bit beyond what you would need. But if you're on top of, hey, I've got some business write-offs and I'm making sure that I'm tracking those, and then you start looking at a little bit deeper into, cool, what's the structure that I need to be operating under? What, is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp? How do I structure that on top of making sure that you're saving enough every single month? And it ends up being relatively easy and stress-free to keep track of all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important. And tax, I always say, is like the first, Canada is a little higher tax and stuff.
Yeah. What's your tax rate there, man?
It depends. Like if you're, I got corporation. So the corporation, You pay corporate tax, and then we can pull dividends. So it's going to be probably slightly different or whatnot. So, I mean, that's one thing we probably won't get into today because it'll be so contextual depending where someone is. But
totally,
I always sort of would look at it as like tax number one, because it's not really your money. So we collect HST or harmonized sales tax that we charge everyone. We've got to that money is just not yours right away. And I think a lot of people, what happens is they just like, oh, I made $5,000 sale. Well, okay, well, you made $5,000 sale, but of that 5,000, you've got to pay for us 13% HST automatically right off the top. And then, assuming you're charging the HST, and then you've got, let's say 17% corporate sales tax or whatever it is to start. So like you've got those percentages. Yeah, there's deductions and all this other stuff. And obviously you got to work with your accountants or whatever on seeing what you can do. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge part. So do you, after like taxes as being the main critical thing, where do you allocate the next? Like, how do you sort of see it? I'm interested to hear your thing.
Yeah. So it depends a lot on where your business is at financially. If you're making enough to be able to pay yourself a salary, or if you're still doing what I call the leftovers model. Early on in our business, I think a lot of people have to do the leftovers model, which is great. Let's say I make $1,000 and I allocate my 15% of that to taxes. So that's what, $150 of that goes to taxes. I've got, what is that, $850 left. So then we have to look at, great, what business expenses do I need to make sure to pay? So maybe I have software, maybe I've got employees, whatever. You make sure you pay your expenses for the month. Then you got to be saving something in your business, because we have to be growing some money to be able to do things like run ads, pay for consultants to come in like you and help us figure out our business, or someday hire down the road, right? We should be saving some money in the business. That I recommend starting at 5%. So then I would say 5% in like a business savings fund. This is all, if you've read the book Profit First, I highly recommend it. It's by a guy named Mike Michalowicz. Yeah. I differ with him on some things, but I really like his core structure of taking profit in your business. So that's 5%. And then we look at, cool, what's left over? So let's say I made $1,000 on a sale. 150 goes out to taxes, 5%, which is like $50 goes out for my savings. Let's say I have, I don't know, $200 in expenses or something from that. Cool. The rest then I could pay myself. And the way it works is I just look at the end of the month. I don't break it down per sale at all, but I do look at end of the month, what came in, what went out, how much do I save for taxes, how much do I save for my savings, and then what's left over to pay myself. That's the leftovers method. And that's what probably 90% of business owners, especially in their first 3 years of business, have to do if the cash flow isn't there yet. Is just, hey, you get to pay yourself what's left over, which means let's try to make as much money as we can to be able to pay ourselves more. And then as that money grows and that your income grows over time, you get to the point where you're making enough that it doesn't make sense to pay yourself, whatever, a 10 grand salary every month yet. Then you can say, great, I'm going to set my salary at $7,000. And anything beyond that just goes into my business savings so that I can reinvest that into things like Facebook ads or a new employee, a new hire, right? So those two different models vary based off, obviously, how much you're making, and that the point of when you change over just kind of depends on, hey, how profitable are you really?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious because I know a lot of people go into profit first. I saw him, present before, and I've read the book and some of the other stuff. What are some things that you differ on?
So a lot of it has to do with, I run an online business, which has ridiculous margins relative to a standard business model, right? You do too, right? We don't have super high overhead. And so for my model, I actually didn't need to save, like my expenses are way lower than Mike Michalowicz's tables are. So he has all these tables where like, hey, these different phases in your business, this is going to be your profit margin. Mine's completely different. The other thing is taxes. He does taxes a little bit differently than I do. I have better strategies, and not that I have them. I know people who have better strategies. And so I don't need to save as much in taxes. He recommends 15.3% savings for taxes. And ultimately that's great. Longer term, it just completely depends on your business model. So where do I differ? Well, I differ in that like my expenses are going to be way lower than he projects for most businesses. And I don't think a lot of people understand his model of what he's talking about when you say take profit for the business. I think of it as, he would call it profit. I call it growth instead, because there's this term profit and people confuse that with like, well, is that my profit? And it's like, no, profit is what you made above and beyond your expenses, but it's not the same. So I just think he confuses people there a little bit with the terminology and then the implementation of it. And so I just try to keep it a little bit simpler. And do I like having those specific bank accounts that he does? Yeah, totally. He recommends, for example, though, having your tax account at a completely separate bank. You're like, I don't need that, man. I just have it in the same bank. It's a different account. And I do pull from my tax account sometimes when I want to make a big purchase and I know that I'm going to get the investment back. Like, heck yeah, Will and I have made investments from our tax account before. We'll pull out money from there. We'll invest in a coach, get the money back, pay it back into that account, and we're good to go. And Mike would say, ooh, that's a big no-no.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like, I'm curious to hear sort of your opinions. I know people try to stay regimented and be like, and you'll hear this sometimes from accountants or whatnot. And, they'll say, well, your marketing should only be 12.5% or whatever. You're spending too much on marketing. So, I obviously am a little bit of the renegade in this. And I would just say, well, I'm going to spend as much money as possible into marketing if it's working to scale that so I can get more new patients or whatever it is. So do you follow or suggest following a specific guideline of like allocation of funds, or like, do you kind of like, how do you manage that, I guess? Because sometimes I know people are really regimented, and if they don't have a strategy, they're going to be like, well, I'm just going to spend it all, or, spend $2,000 on something instead of 1,000 because of whatever,
Yeah. So here's the problem that I see a lot of business owners making. This is when I first got into this world, this was the mentality that I was exposed to. So I didn't know any different. There are a lot of business owners who think, wow, I really need to spend as much as I can so that I can show a loss for my business or break even for my business. And that mentality is super common because at one point, some tax advisor probably told people, hey, you want to show zero profitability so you don't have to pay a lot in taxes. Look, I want you to get so dang profitable. I want you to make tons and tons of money, and we'll deal with the tax strategy on the back end. On the other hand, I also want you to be able to find as many things that can be write-offs as possible so you can write them off. Sorry, my screen's going nuts. But I don't want you to like make I don't want you to make new purchases just to reduce your taxes. And so that's the first big thing is from an allocation standpoint, like, dude, spend what you need to, but don't spend money just to get your taxes down. There's other ways to do that. And then with marketing, for example, man, if you have a marketing campaign that works, pour money into that, especially with like paid ads. I have so many business owners who come to me and they say, well, my ads budget is $1,000 total. And that includes the management fee. So I had someone, Will, my business partner, runs ads. I ran ads in the past. I know you run ads too for people and you teach them how to do it. I had someone come to me and say, I only allocated $1,500 to ads. It's like, okay, well, let's look at what that got for you. And they were paying someone like $1,000 to manage their ads.
$500 spend.
and $1,500 in ad spend, right? And so we looked at that and it was ridiculously profitable, right? Ridiculously profitable. They said, well, that's my budget. It's like, stop. This is money that when you put it into a machine, you're getting more money out. It's giving you new budget. So that idea of I have this advertising budget, it's really antiquated for me. It's like, does the ad work? Are you at a point first in your business where it makes sense to run ads? If you are, wonderful. Work with someone like Brad who understands ads, help like get them set up so that you know they're working, and then pour as much as you can, scale that to as much as you can to where it's still giving you a decent ROI. Like, where's the budget in that? That doesn't make sense to me to say, oh, I only have $1,000 to spend on ads. It's like, I get that, but if it's working, why wouldn't you want to do more of that if it's bringing you in more money? So I just have a problem with looking at what does a specific budget need to look like or what percentage. It's like, look, how much does it cost you to get a new patient? Great. How much revenue do you generate from that new patient? Great. Do the numbers look good? Does it make sense? Do more of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's a big struggle that I meet with people who are kind of on the sort of the next level is they get so stuck into, and you'll hear these questions passed around sometimes like, I'll ask people, well, how much would you spend like to retain someone? Like, how much do you spend for referrals? Like I had a conversation earlier this week with someone and I was like, well, you're getting a bunch of referrals from people and it's going well. So like, what are you doing? Well, I'm not doing anything. Well, why not spend money? Well, I don't have any budget for that, but it's like, so I guess that's kind of like the thing. It's like, how do we get people to sort of think less about budgets and getting siloed into, I've got $1,000 for this, to be like, well, I've got 1,000 that I allocated for a test. And, these are the things that I'm seeing. So I want to be able to allocate more money from here and be more dynamic. Because I think too many people get stuck into that. And I mean, that's one thing that, I've really sort of bucked against, so to speak, is I would just, well, this is working and I can spend money on this, I can make money from this and kind of go from there. What are your thoughts kind of on that and how to navigate for people who are like really regimented? The David Ramsey, people, like I've talked to a couple of people. There's one person that sticks out. I follow David Ramsey. I don't use credit cards. I don't do this. I don't do this. And nothing against Dave Ramsey or whatever, but it's like, well, your business is screwed. Like you're not making money. You can't grow. You can't do this stuff because you're in that thinking of like tick, 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 instead of dynamic or geometric growth. Okay, let's talk about this for a minute. There are 2 points and I don't want to forget them. We've got Dave Ramsey and I'll get to him in just a minute. And then we've got the budget question, right? So your business, all it is it's a machine. All it is it's a machine. It's a machine to put in either your time or your money. And on the back end of it, it processes people and their problems and you serve them and then you get them a result and they pay you money on the back end. Your business is literally it's intended to be a money machine with the inputs of either your money or your time and outputs of more money. That's it. Okay. So if we just simplify it to that, then we look at, cool, if the machine is working and I can stop putting in a little bit of my time and I can start saying, hey, I've got it set up so that I can put money in. Either I'm hiring someone or I'm advertising, right? Then I'm putting money into the machine and more money comes out. And then suddenly some of that money comes back into the machine, right? It comes back into circulation. So it expands the amount of resources that I have to put in there. Ultimately, isn't the goal to put less and less of your time into that machine to free you up? That's the whole point of the business, to build a machine where you can start replacing using your time to get money and replace it with being able to use money to get more money.
And it's money that's coming out the back end of the machine, and you recycle it to put into the front end so that you get more out, right? That's the whole goal of a business. So this idea of, well, I'm only supposed to spend this amount. It's like, look, how well does the machine work? That's why you go to someone like Brad to be able to figure out how to build the machine so that it works well enough that we can put more money into it and get more money out the back end. That's why like your Facebook ad stuff that you do with people is so incredible. Like, look, you're helping them build that machine so they can put money in, get more money out. And so that's just, I think, a mindset issue with business owners. They look at their money as it's finite. It's like, well, yeah, it's finite, but guess what? Your time is way more finite. So how can we get a way that we can stop spending as much of your time and instead spend more of the money to make more money? Again, that's the whole goal with investing at the end of the day, is how do I make my money make more money? Well, your business is simply a machine to do that. That's number one. Number two, Dave Ramsey. Bless Dave Ramsey. I like that guy a lot as a person. I think he does amazing things for people. I grew up on the Dave Ramsey system. You'll notice a lot of Dave Ramsey in how I talk and think in terms of like, I have the envelope system, but digitized, right? But I think that you have to understand the origin of who Dave Ramsey's target audience is with the information and guidance he's giving. Dave Ramsey is he's a guide for the masses who are massively in debt, don't have any control over how they spend money. And so he has to teach with very broad principles applied to people who get themselves in really terrible financial situations. Not primarily business owners, by the way, if you look at it. So for example, I followed Dave Ramsey for a long time, but guess what? I use credit cards at the wazoo. I never, ever carry a balance on them, ever, but I use credit cards all the time. And it works out great for me. And I pay it off on time and all this stuff. I just think that so many people get overly cautious with Dave Ramsey principles and don't look at, well, what are the options out there that you can ultimately be using something other than your time to grow things? And again, I think Dave Ramsey does a lot of good for people, but I think he also slows a lot of people down. So my whole thing is, how can we raise your level of stewardship over your finances so that you're looking at things like what's coming in, what's going out? Where is my money? Do I have enough to actually go invest in some Facebook ads? Sweet. Can I make sure that those Facebook ads are working, or whatever advertising that I'm doing is working, so I can just keep putting more into the system? So that's how I at this point would not teach my kids Dave Ramsey principles.
Got it. Yeah. Sorry, you cut out there for a sec, but you're good.
Oh, sorry.
All good. Yeah, I totally get it. And I think that's really important. And part of it's like, I sort of see it's like building assets, and, employees are assets. Like one of the biggest things you can do, marketing campaigns are assets and stuff. So, a little bit of a mindset shift. So, I'm curious, like, what are some key metrics that you really like to look at in terms of someone's business that they've like absolutely got to have down? There's a couple on the top of my mind, but I really like to hear, from you on what you think you've got to know these numbers. If you don't know them, you're like running blind with the scissors in your hand.
Cool. So let's nerd out on KPIs for a minute. I think that the mindset first, I always look at, cool, what are the high level principles and what's the application of that? The high level principle is we need to be able to know, we need to be able to differentiate between lead indicators and lag indicators. Lag indicators are things that happen as a result of some action. So sales, for example, is a lag indicator. Revenue is a lag indicator. Client satisfaction is a lag indicator. Referrals are a lag indicator. So is it important to track lag indicators? Yes, absolutely. We need to track things like revenue, but I think it's more important, especially early on in the business, to track lead indicators, meaning action metrics. What actions am I taking in the business? So I run an online business and I coach people in online business. So some of the metrics that we look at are, am I having conversations with people? Right, that's a lead indicator. Am I connecting with new people? Am I getting on sales calls with new people? Lead indicators. Am I sending out emails to my list? Am I visiting physicians to build referral networks? Right, all of these things are lead indicators. So we just have to differentiate between lead and lag. Lead indicators that I think are useful are like, what marketing efforts am I engaging in? So things like emails sent, or in our world where it's online, it's Facebook posts made. It's people reached out to in Messenger. It's sales calls gotten on. If I'm looking at, hey, what things do I really care about? And when we go in and have this conversation with business owners, we kind of back plan from their revenue goal. And ultimately we're saying, great, what do you want to be making from your business on the personal side? Like what does it need to be paying you post-tax? Then we ask the question, we just reverse engineer it from there. If you want the business to be paying you $10,000 a month post-tax, great. How much do you need to be selling on the business revenue-wise in order to hit that? Okay, if you know that this is your profit margin, this is how much you need to save for taxes, this is how much you need to save for savings, how much do you need to sell? So I would be tracking that number. Then I would be tracking things like, great, in order to make those sales, what are the sales efforts required? How many sales calls do I need to get on? Cool. Back from that, how many conversations do I need to get on in order to have those sales calls? Or how much do I need to spend in ad spend to generate those sales conversations? Cool. One step back from that, how many campaigns do I need to have in order to get those conversations? Awesome. In order to have those campaigns, what efforts do I need to do this week to get those rolling out? With the whole thing being, at the end of the day, I want to know how much is making it to my bank account as the primary lag indicator, because that's the thing that I care about at the end of the day. What is coming into my pocket? So I always ask people like, hey, how much are you paying yourself? Well, I don't really know. I'm not really paying myself yet. Cool. That's the biggest red flag lag indicator there is. And then if we talk KPIs, I mean, it's things like new sales, new leads, lead conversion, right? All of those things that we know are important from a marketing standpoint.
For sure. And I really think it's super important to track, and not enough people do. Like the thing with tracking too also tells you and diagnoses where things are wrong in the business. So like, I can tell you 16-8-5, you need 16 triage calls, like 16 conversations to have 8 strategy sessions to have 5 sales. So, if I'm looking at from a sales standpoint, 16-8-5 is the number I can look at. So if I'm at, 10, then I know that it's going to be harder to close the other gaps. And you can say, well, I don't have enough leads. I need to work on more leads, more conversations and whatnot. So it actually, in my sort of with this online world and also in clinics, is like seeing exactly where the breakdown is, because sometimes people are chasing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like the lizards, when you're chasing the lizard and it gets the tail and it detaches and you're chasing the wrong thing. I find that with business owners a lot, where, you are looking at the wrong thing. So metrics are obviously really important.
Yeah. And I think that so many people, they say, well, I need more sales. It's like, great. You need more sales. That's a lag indicator. Mm-hmm. What's actually not working that's not getting you more sales? Is it that you're just not getting in front of enough people? Maybe you're not doing workshops. Maybe you're not sending out enough emails. Maybe you're not running ads. Like we got to figure out, is it a reach problem? Are we not reaching enough people? Is it a problem that we're not nurturing them, so they're not getting on calls with us in the first place? They're not hitting our front desk. Is it that we're having those conversations with them, but we're not converting them to a plan of care? What's the problem there? So just saying I need more sales is a really ambiguous and uninformed way of looking at the problem in our business. And so we always nudge people to go a level deeper. Great. If you need more sales, why? Let's talk about that. What does the pipeline look like? And where's the bottleneck in that?
Yeah, I think that's a super important way, because I hear so many times, I need more leads. Well, how many leads you got? 100 a month. Okay, well, you don't have a lead problem. You have a conversion problem, most than likely. So, we go look at it and you're closing 4% of people, I think it's really important. So yeah, I love that. Anytime someone has a problem, think, well, why do I have this problem in the first place? And it's that next level of thinking. I know it's not necessarily financial, it's kind of the whole business, but that next level of strategic thinking is more proactive instead of reactive, and will allow you to put you in the right direction. Because there's people I've literally had conversations with almost a year ago, and they still kind of communicate or engage with stuff. And it's like, they're in the same position and they had the same problem. Well, it's been a year and you haven't figured it out. Like we're not looking at the right standpoint. And it's like treating a patient, it's the same thing in business. You have the same problem in business where you're not getting enough sales for a year. There's something wrong. I spoke to someone who was 3 months into their business. They haven't had one sale yet. They haven't had one new patient. And I'm thinking, well, something is wrong with what you're doing. Like, you got to change that strategy. The same thing with patient. You're not going to treat someone for a year straight with an ankle problem and they don't get any better, right? So I think it's super important what you said there to keep it. So yeah, is there anything else that you feel is like really, really important, that's a must know, must have for business owners?
Yeah, man, I'll just end with this. And it gets back to this idea of stewardship. And stewardship for me means taking care of what you've already been given in order to qualify to receive something greater. And if you have not been a wise financial steward over your own personal finances at this point, if things are a mess or you don't know where things are at, or you don't have a system in place or organization in place, I'm just begging you right now, please get on top of this. There is no reason to be hustling 60 hours a week in your business to create something that's not ultimately making it down to where you really want it to in your bank account. Like if you're spending 60, 70 hours in the clinic and your personal finances are a mess, why would we even be doing that? Why would we work so hard when the whole end result is to be able to help you increase your financial status and your financial security and where you're at? And it's just a mess there. So number one, take care of your personal finances, figure out like these things that we talked about, what's coming in every month, what's coming out. You would be so amazed at how few people are looking at their finances on a weekly basis personally. And I know that sounds like, oh, I don't want to do that. But guys, there's free tools for all this stuff. It can be so easy. Look at your bank account. Use mint.com, use the Every Dollar app, use anything to look at your finances on a regular basis. And it's so funny when I have people go through my Profit You program, the first thing we have them do is look at what are all the expenses going out of your account every month. We just did this exercise last week, and I had people rate anywhere from $50 to $300 a month that they had no clue that was coming out of their accounts. It was like, $300 a month that you had no clue was coming out, that's $3,600 a year just bleeding cash from some stupid thing that you signed up for a year ago that you had no clue about. Or what happened to me, like an internet bill that went from $30 to like $180, and I had no clue because I wasn't looking at it. So I've been there too, but up your level of financial stewardship, focus on your personal finances first, and then let's address the business. If the business is profitable, but it's not profiting you, like if you're making money, but it's not ending up in your account, something's wrong there. If you're not paying yourself, something's wrong there. If you have no clue what's up with taxes, something's wrong there. We need to fix that. And if you have these grandiose plans of scaling and growing the business someday, we cannot scale a problem. We cannot scale disorganization. We cannot scale a lack of systems. That's what scaling means. That's what growth means in your business. It means figure out where you're at, figure out what the problems are, get organization and systems in place to fix those things. And then we can do so much to just set something up now, set a system up now and keep it going forever. At this point in the game, I spend about 5 minutes a week on personal finances and about an hour a month, 45 minutes to an hour a month, my wife and I sit down and we're good. And it's easy and it's great. And I know where all my money is. And I sleep well at night knowing that I've got a year of emergency in the bank. And I've got multiple months in my checking account. And if something happens, I'm good. Same structure in my business. We have business savings in place. We have a plan in place. We know what's coming in. We know what's going out. And I feel in control. And at the end of the day, that's what business owners tell me once we work together and get this stuff organized, is they say, I feel like for the first time as a business owner, I'm actually a business owner and not just running a hobby anymore. And that's the best feeling.
Love it. So important. So if people want to learn a little more about how to get in control and need some help and want to take it to the next level, like how can they reach out to you and, get that first step?
Yeah, man. I think the best place to go, I have a full website that's coming up. It's probably not online quite yet. Well, I know it's not. You could check out, if you wanted to look at my program, it's called Profit You. If you go to Profit U, Profit, the letter U, course.com, profityoucourse.com. You can check out that program. It's super cheap for all the business owners who need it. That's my passion project. It's not the main business. And so I can price it at whatever I want, which is so fun. If your finances are not organized, if you feel like you don't have a plan for it, head there. You can always reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. You'll probably tag me in this so people can find me. And those are probably the best two places to hit me up.
Cool. I'll drop those links below so people can reach out. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking about this, because it is a huge aspect that I think business owners, I even know myself, it's not an enjoyable part of things for me to do. I'd rather market and sell. I'm not a huge finance guy, but I've learned that it's really, an important aspect for your business health and your personal health and everything. So thanks again for coming on.
You got it, brother. Thanks for having me.